Welcome to the channel. I'm your host, Carshénah with versefilmsproductions, and this is Screamtober. I'll be doing a video a day for 31 days up into Halloween, so let's get started. Welcome to Verse Films Productions' annual Screamtober here on our horror channel. I'm your host, Carshénah, and I've got 31 days to get you in the mood for Halloween. Join me as I share a video a day with a new theme each week that you will find scary, haunting, and sometimes just plain fun. Let's get into it. Week 2 is Kids Horror Week. Calling all kids this week, we've got something for everyone, young and old. Parents, you can actually sit down and watch these movies with your kids this week and have some fun, or let them loose on their own. These kid-friendly movies will keep you craving for more. The Witches, 1990, and the remake, 2020. You can buy or rent on Amazon Prime or Apple Plus. Rated PG with a runtime of 1 hour and 31 minutes. The story finds a young boy named Luke, played by Jason Fisher, moving in with his grandma Helga, played by Mai Zetterling, following the death of his parents. She lives in Norway and is something of a witch expert. Pretty soon, she has filled his mind with tales of witchery and caution. Grandma falls seriously ill and is advised to go to the English seaside to recover, accompanied by Luke. Luke accidentally attends the convention of the RSPCC, the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children, only to find out it is actually a coven of the hideous witches his granny has described to the last detail. He is captured by them and metamorphs into a mouse, but still comes up with a plot to wipe them out. Their leader is Miss Ernst, played by Angelica Houston, an aristocratic lady whose gothic and sharp characteristics seem to vaguely ring some bells in Helga's memory. The witches hide their ugly real faces under masks. Miss Ernst is, of course, the notorious Grand High Witch, the most repelling, terrifying, powerful, and infernal of them all. The Grand High Witch is fed up with her underlings and decides that enough time has been wasted. Therefore, she forms a master plan according to which they will easily eliminate all the children in the country. Luke and another boy named Bruno, who was also turned into a mouse, are on the lam. They must find Luke's grandmother so that they can foil the witches' dastardly plot before it's too late, and they plan to do so by giving the witches some of their own medicine. It is now up to Luke and Helga to save the United Kingdom from this massacre. This film is enormous fun, punctuated by offbeat performances from famous writer Roald Dahl, who everyone knows gave us Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. The original starred Angelica Houston as the Grand High Witch, who is terrifying and funny in equal measure with splendid puppet work from the late Jim Henson. The remake, directed by Robert Zemeckis, stars Anne Hathaway, and she does a good job of updating the character 30 years later. However, the only reason to do a remake is to upgrade the mice with CGI, and that's often a bad idea. The charm of the old animatronics is actually more timeless than CGI, which ages over time. The remake does inject some American racial divide into the story, but the movie drops that interesting take rather quickly. The story uses the moral that children should never talk to strangers, but enhances it with the ingenious and disturbing premise of witches being responsible for evil acts towards children. The story has some real pace and purpose, and constantly turns up another surprise or twist just when you think you've figured out what's coming next. The supporting performances by Rowan Atkinson, yes, Mr. Bean himself in the original, and Stanley Tucci in the remake as the snooty hotel manager. And Oscar winner Octavia Spencer plays the grandmother in the 2020 remake. The character names in the remake reflect the book's generic name of Hero Boy and Grandma. Chris Rock voices the older voice of the Hero Boy, and Jazeer Bruno voices younger Hero Boy. All in all, The Witches, the original movie, is a must-see kids horror flick for kids and adults of all ages. The imagery used by the director is effective and plays a crucial part for the atmosphere of the movie. Congratulations to the special effects team and makeup crew for their awesome depiction of the bare-skulled sorcerers. The The whole concept is a multi-leveled parody. Firstly, the childish phobias of mean witches are depicted pleasantly. Secondly, the underlying metaphor the film tries to pull off at how cruel these social workers and charity people can be instead of preventing the cruelty is funny. There are also many other humorous scenes, obviously wanting to counterbalance the scary ones, like when Bruno, an overweight, spoiled rich boy who was transformed into a mouse by the witches, says compliantly to his freaked out parents, "Don't take it so hard, Mom. You did, after all, want me to lose weight, didn't you?" Speaking of the mouse, I would also like to make a reference to the professional puppeteering and dubbing special effects by Jim Henson, which are very successful. Generally, the effects for this movie are well crafted and not at all dated. The director also did a good job in setting the creepy scenes or the action sequences like the finale. The casting of Luke in the original was that we finally get a real character and not a piece of cardboard. Luke doesn't apply to any of the stereotypes we see in cinema generally. He is not the cute and painfully sappy sweet little boy or the nerdy goof, and he is definitely not the do-it-all superhero. Mai Zetterling, who is also the narrator, gives a warm performance as the wise grandmother and also the most dramatic one of the entire film. She therefore provides the human element of tragedy in the movie. Angelica Houston arguably steals the show in a challenging role. She's exceptional, being threatening and spooky, not necessarily in her real grotesque appearance, but with her ice-cold stare. The kid who plays Bruno adds much comic relief in an obviously preachy role about the sin of gluttony. The Witches is a film which has a perfect balance between a dark fairy tale and sneaky adult satire. It is well worth watching for fantasy fans too. Here's some fun trivia about the film. Many of the witches in the meeting are men in women's clothing. After a test screening, Roald Dahl angrily expressed to the producers how appalled he was at the vulgarity, the bad taste, and actual terror in certain parts of the film. Dahl demanded his name and the title be removed from the film prior to release, but after receiving an apologetic complimentary letter from Jim Henson, Dahl grudgingly withdrew his threat. It took Angelica Houston 8 hours of makeup time to transform into the Grand High Witch. The film was released in the United Kingdom on May 25, 1990, over a week after the death of executive producer Jim Henson, who died on May 16th of 1990. However, Henson did view the positive responses from test screenings in February of 1990. Many of the film's music cues heavily resemble The Shining from 1980, another movie that takes place largely at a hotel. Jim Henson's Creature Shop created 3 different sizes of puppet mice. The A mice were the size of actual mice, being operated by almost hair-thin cables. The B mice, also cable-controlled, were about the size of a very large rat. The C-type was very expressive, large hand puppets, about 3 feet tall. Here's some fun trivia about the remake. The remake was released by Warner Brothers, and the Acme mousetraps used in the film were a reference to the Looney Tunes, also released by Warner Brothers. Anne Hathaway was pregnant with her son Jack at the time of filming. Both Octavia Spencer and Anne Hathaway starred in superhero movies. Octavia was in Spider-Man in 2002, while Hathaway was in DC's The Dark Knight Rises in 2012 as Catwoman. Throughout his entire life, Roald Dahl was an outspoken and unapologetic anti-Semite, expressing virulently anti-Jewish opinions throughout his career and even in his last interviews shortly before his death. In 2020, not long after this movie's release of the remake, the Dahl family issued an acknowledgement and apology for Roald Dahl's anti-Semitism. Despite the writer's personal view, the work created is timeless and certainly a must-watch classic. See you tomorrow as Screamtober with Verse Films Productions continue right here on the channel.